If you do nothing, you know the results. We have a responsibility, regardless of our circumstances, regardless of what hand life has dealt you. You have a responsibility to do something about your circumstances. You're in charge of that, you're in control of that, and you're responsible for that. So doing something, taking action is a vital component.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators Podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. Our special guest today is Merril Hoge. Meryl, welcome to the podcast.
Seth, been looking forward to this. It's taken a while, but I'm glad we finally got together. So thanks for having me.
Well, we're excited. In preparing, I will say we're going to make history because you absolutely are the first NFL player, former player, who's a guest on our podcast that quotes with great frequency Aristotle and Walter Payton and somehow ties it all together. So I'm excited because that's a challenge. How do we bring Greek philosophy in to the NFL, have it make sense and serve our audience? So, for those out there that are joining us, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like, engage, comment, share with your neighbor, your football coach, your whole town, whatever it takes. We want to get the word out. Meryl, I just want to dive right into the deep end. It's no secret. And for those who are listening, can check out his speaker profile. We'll put it in the show notes. You've had your share of adversity. And I just want to get a sense from you in your own words. What do you attribute to having a positive outlook, the resilience, the grit, but really this mindset of using adversity and using the things that life throws at us that aren't, let's say, optimal or desirable to find a way, which is the title of one of your books? What do you attribute that to?
Well, Seth, it's an interesting question for this reason. I was asked just the other day, and for some reason, I'm wondering why I'd never really thought in greater depths about it. But when I speak, I do mention the significance of those words. You mentioned Aristotle, that they would fall into line here. There's a lot of things that have given me hope in my life, and Find a Way was the first time they ever popped in my head. The scenario I was in as a young kid, they just gave me hope because they changed how I thought about things. They changed how I went about things. And so they gave me hope. Now, they were supposed to help me live a dream. And that was part of being a kid and trying to play in the National Football League, which was my ultimate goal. But as life moves on, I now say, it's help me live a dream and fight to live, and a lot of in between. But in the journey, the thing that's probably taught me most about myself was the greatest challenges that I faced, and actually acknowledging I had just read a book. There was a book on a guy that had battled cancer, and he walked through his journey. And I remember closing the book, and I'm like, man, of all the things in my life that I will never have to deal with, it's going to be one of those, because my family history, we have no cancer in our family history. My lifestyle, there was nothing that would indicate I would ever have cancer in my life. And I'm like, that's one thing I just couldn't handle. That would be beyond me. That'd be beyond my capabilities, the strength, and all the things. And I was very adamant about that. I was like, I never have to worry about it. Almost a year later to the date, I got diagnosed with cancer. And true to form, I was overwhelmed by the darkness of that diagnosis. I was consumed in chemotherapy and dying, and that was it. I'm not going to bore you with the journey because there's a lot to that, but those words again would ignite a different mindset. They would change my journey. And when I go back and look at those experiences of, doing all these things to try to live a dream and do something I loved, I really found out more about me in the challenge to live and fight through chemotherapy and endure that battle. I found out more about me there than I did achieving the ultimate goal was to play in the National Football League. And I'm grateful for that. There's been a lot of things in a chemotherapy chair that I would never Well, I wouldn't be here today. Actually, I wouldn't be speaking. Wouldn't even think about speaking. I would have never written a book. And it was all being challenged by a dear friend of mine who had videoed the day and documented the 12-hour treatment, which is my last one. And I was telling him the journey of Find a Way and how Find a Way originally started, back to help me live a dream. And he's like, "Oh, you got to write a book, Meryl." And I was like, "Charlie, if I survive, I'll write your book." About a year later, he challenged me to write a book. So sometimes in the moment, of darkness, of dark days, we can tend to get so consumed in the darkness that we don't find, some of the things that could come from it that end up being principles in our life and things that make who you really are and an opportunity to make you who you really are. That's probably, of the journey and the experiences. I don't want to do it again. I mean, I'm not volunteering to do it again, but I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
I'm truly grateful for it because it taught me more. And it taught me more. It taught me a lot about, Find a Way is not about me. Find a Way is about people, because everybody has something. You got circumstance, you have challenges, life dealt you a hand. Okay. How you play that hand. Do you point fingers, cast blame, and make excuses? If you do, then you're in a toxic blender of disaster. And people that do that, they make their day easy, but their tomorrow harder. And that is a true fact. And it comes down to, you control your mind, or does your mind control you? And that art is where Find a Way, I think, really probably initiated the strength that I started controlling my mind. Those words helped me control my mind and helped me stay on path and try to share those things with people. They're capable of doing those exact same things. This isn't like, well, there's a certain rare breed that does. No, 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 no. If you have a mind and you can breathe, you can do it. In fact, people that learn to control their mind can overcome anything and become anything. And that is proven. I have seen it and I have lived it.
Yeah, you sure have. And it's interesting for me. My background in sports, not at the level of you, but was basketball and tennis. And tennis could be, it's very isolated. You're out there unless you're playing doubles, but even then, it's very constrained to just two people. It can be a thinking man's game, basketball as well. And the more I'm learning about the NFL, even as a 57-year-old, I'm just struck by how thoughtful and introspective players are. The ones that have been on our podcast, we've worked with Troy Aikman, we've worked with Carl Mecklenburg, and a whole host of others. Rocky Blyer, somebody who's near and dear to your heart. And the interesting thing for me, two things I kind of want to underscore, and it just strikes me as so interesting, Meryl. You said a couple of times, I learned more about myself during that period of trials and tribulations than it was as the 12-year-old who wrote that goal down and studied Walter Payton and all the other things that got you to the NFL. 10 touchdowns in one particular season. You had some great accomplishments playing for, a historic franchise. But what's the value, of learning about yourself, finding more out about yourself? That's one. And the ironic, and I don't know if it's ironic, isn't it interesting that the vehicle for Finding a Way was Finding a Way was the vehicle to get you to the NFL, but it became I don't know, the philosophy or the tools or the mindset, or really the vehicle to get you through the hardest part of your life, which wasn't, being in the backfield facing a defense.
Well,
two-part question there. Kind of, I don't know if I'm in cover two or if I'm in man-to-man. So help me out.
Well, you're the NFL, so you're showing cover two, but you're going to get to cover one. It's completely fair. That's what you do. That's how complicated the NFL can be. Well, Find a Way is, okay, they're words. At the end of the day, they're words. But those words inspired action in my life, and they gave me hope. And the one word that I just used is a responsibility we all have. Okay, regardless of your circumstance, regardless of your challenge, I know you have them. I know everybody who will listen to this or watch this has them. And this is universally true. And everybody would know this. If you do nothing, you know the results. We have a responsibility, regardless of our circumstances, regardless of what hand life has dealt you. You have a responsibility to do something about your circumstances. You're in charge of that, you're in control of that, and you're responsible for that. So doing something, taking action is a vital component. And it always comes, like I call it a tool belt in life. You got a tool belt in life, and there's certain tools that you develop and you learn along the way, and then they can be applied at any time. I know we'll probably hit Aristotle. I'll do it now. I mean,
let's just
when the first,
just bring out the Greeks now.
yeah. In my journey, okay, find a way inspired me to take action. Well, if I don't really come across those words, if they didn't change my mindset and give me a certain sense of energy and a desire to go learn more, ironically, about Walter Payton. Keep in mind, I'm going to find things on Walter Payton, but I have to paint this picture of 1977. If you wanted to find information about or get access to anything, you had to go to the library. It isn't like today where you just pick your phone up, you Google search, FaceTime, text. Just didn't have that access. And so I went to the library to search Walter Payton. I'd seen some things he had done, heard about things he had done, but I was like, there's got to be more, and I was really interested in how he approached things. I loved how he approached things. I tried all these things. I'd heard about how he approached things. Well, I ended up coming across Aristotle accidentally. And I still say it today. I don't know why I chose to read the stuff he had written, but the more I read, the more interested I become. And I ended up coming across a quote, and I'm telling you, it was like, truth. I mean,
Wow.
power, hope. And we are what we repeatedly do. And excellence is not an act, but a habit. So I'm a 12-year-old kid. I'm trying to find ways to play in the National Football League. What does it take? And here's how I read that quote resonated with me. The truth, and you are what you repeatedly do. Okay. You're in charge of that. You're in control of that. If you love the path you're on, well, then keep building on that path. But you got to keep building. You can't just stay on cruise control, but keep building. If you don't like the path you're on, you can change it. And that gave me hope. Like, they gave me hope, and I knew I didn't have room for error. But I'm like, man, then it's about patterns, it's about habits, and it's about developing the right things and developing it and getting the most out of your God-given ability. I was like, that gave me hope. I'm like, I knew I didn't have room for error, but I got excited. I was like, wow. So that's why I wrote it down, and that's why it resonated with me so much. And that just became a tool in my tool belt of life. When I look at things, when I just say you're just struggling in some areas, you could probably find out where that problem is and how you can fix it. Quite honestly, it isn't just finding the problem, but how you can fix it within your routine of who you are and what you do every day, repeatedly. If you really looked at that, there's 3/3 of perfect health. Nutrition, exercise, activity, and I'll even throw in their purpose, and then rest. And all of those are important. They are a significant component for perfect health. And if you looked at your routine and all those 3/3 and you really break them down, you can find out who you are and where you can grow and get better and where you can evolve. And I learned to do those types of things. And the words Find a Way inspired all of that. Now, all the things I just mentioned, everybody is got those type of challenges. They want that type of growth. I don't, you have to meet, maybe there are people, it's like, man, I don't need anything. I don't care about being successful. I don't care about doing,
they're lying.
Yeah. There's not a court. Okay. Have you ever had a client come up and go, we're pretty good. Really, we just,
no, they
just come by and say a few words.
Yes.
Yeah.
People want to grow.
How do you evolve? And it has been, like, honestly, I'll be 60 in January, and I still feel like I'm like, God, I don't know anything. Yeah. Like, man, I don't know anything. And that's exciting. That's exciting in some ways because I'm like, but I do know a lot of things and experience a lot of things that help me navigate through life. And I keep reflecting back to the words Find a Way, how they have, they've inspired me to take action. And here's what I have learned. And I think it's a personal responsibility that we all have. One of the greatest personal gifts, correct that with a personal gift, that a human being can give themselves. It'll bring you the greatest peace and joy you could possibly have, is that when you're in a reflection of a mirror, you're end of a journey, you might be in the middle of it a little bit. It might be some challenge you're dealing with. And you have moments where you ask yourself questions like this. Are you doing your part? Did you do your part? Are you getting everything out of your God-given ability? Now, that's why self-reflection is so important. You get to check on yourself. If you're not getting everything out of your God-given ability, go get it. If there's more in there, you have responsibility to go get it. But if you're at the end of something and you're like, man, I did my part, like, have peace with that.
Yeah.
I know of nobody that's given everything they've had and done their very best that has ever regretted it.
Yeah.
And when you can do those things in life, now doesn't mean it always comes out and ends like you wanted it. But then you can have peace with going, I did my part.
Yeah.
I got peace with that.
Sometimes the regrets are more about not acting than acting and having
100%.
having it not come out the way you wanted it, right?
100%. That's why, like, it's better to build a life of resiliency than a life of regret. You live, I go, live by what you trust, not by what you fear. And most people were like, what? Live by what you trust. Okay. Think about this. Who wants your goals and dreams more than you? No one. Who is going to do all of the work to your deadline or your challenge that you face? Who's going to do the work for it? You are. Trust you. That's why when you look, when I say moments of self-reflection, like I call moments of truth. I've had a lot of those in my life. And I do take moments where I'll stand in front of the mirror. I'll tell you the first time it actually ever happened to me that I literally did this. I stood in front of the mirror. I'm going to tell you this, then I'll back up to that first time. Sure. But I take moments where I look at myself and it's like, are you doing everything you can? Okay, here's what you're trying to do. Are you really doing everything that you could possibly do? Are you devoting every day to the things that are needed to get you to where you are? And there's times you're like, you know what? No. So don't be disappointed, okay, when you're not quite where you are, okay? You start spending more time doing that. Just like check-ins. And I do it all the time because you have tendency to start cheating on some things. And I'll just do an hour there today. I need 2, but I'll just do an hour. Okay, well, nobody to blame but you. And you can change that. But that's the powerful thing. Now, where this was the most poignant, and the very first time I ever did it, I had been working for ESPN for about 5 years. I hated the end of the season because we always had to go to the Super Bowl for a week. And it was the most painful week of my life because the way my career ended, people ask me, what do you miss? I go, I miss what I didn't accomplish. I never won a Super Bowl. And that's the only thing I played it for. I don't miss Monday nights. I don't miss playoff games. I don't miss Sunday. I don't miss training. I don't miss none of that. I miss what I didn't accomplish. And I would go through this toxic blender, point fingers, cast blame, make excuses. I jumped in it. That's how I know about it. Okay.
Right.
When my career ended, I went into cardiac arrest. I laid in intensive care for days. I had to learn how to read again. I went through severe depression. I had to start my life over at age 30. I mean, literally. And I started out that toxic blender of disaster. That's where I understand, the struggles people can have, oftentimes. And when you're depressed, you're living in the past. When you have anxiety, you're living in the future. I had all of that mixed into one. And it was this moment I laid on the couch doing this repeatedly. I'd done this for months or so. I realized who was responsible to get me off the couch. It hit me. There's like this little, in fact, I was reflecting back as a kid. I was like, man, this all started as a kid. I'm starting to point fingers, cast blame again. I'm having a great time at just abusing everything. I got more reasons to be on that couch. I got more reasons to be pathetic. I mean,
right. There's no scarcity when you're in that way. There's no scarcity of pointing the finger. You have hundreds of fingers.
Best. And then there was like this little flicker of hope. And I remember thinking, get off the couch. Get off the couch. Get off the couch and do something. And then things will change. And honestly, that revitalized me. Again, I talk about find a way live a dream and fight to live in a lot of in between. Here's an in between. It challenged me to get off the couch and do something. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean it just worked out after that. I'm not saying that.
No, then
it's a 5-year journey. Then the real work comes.
Then the actual doing it has to happen.
Yes. So first call I make is back. I returned Lynn Swan. Lynn Swan had called me because he knew I'd work. I was thinking about getting into media there. That's when that crew was the ABC #1 crew in college football, and they had a game in Illinois.
I
Michigan
remember
was playing Illinois.
ABC, right? ABC.
Yep.
Yep.
And Lynn Swan, because he was with the Steelers. I had done stuff with him before. And keep in mind, a lot of people, what I'm getting at, it's like, you don't have to do it by yourself. You have to get off the couch by yourself. That's your responsibility. But then, yes, getting help is a critical component of the journey. I mean, so I started reaching out to people and returning calls and reached out to people who hadn't called me. And came in the journey. And then Mr. Rooney has me become the first player in the broadcast booth with the Steelers. This ESPN hires me to help launch ESPN2. So I get fast forward some 5 years later, but I'm still struggling. I have these moments and it's Super Bowl time. It's just really hard for me. And I'm in my master bedroom. I walk into the bathroom. I literally look in the mirror and I'm like, and I'm always kind of compared myself, through Walter Payton. Okay, that could put you in that house anyway. So that's, you should never compare.
Right.
Don't pick somebody else other than Walter Payton. But because he was my idol, and and I got to know him better in Chicago. Anyway, long story short. And I was like, I never won a Super Bowl. And I'm going through these things again. I'm going back to the pity party, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm when I look in the mirror, I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. What more could you have done that you didn't do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, almost just like that. I was like, what is it? I was like, okay, there's actually one thing I wish I would have done better back then, just as we didn't know much about it then. I wish I would have rested my body more. That's the only thing I would have done differently. But we didn't have that awareness and information back then. It was like work, grind. It isn't like how do you manage stuff and become.
But that doesn't fall under you consciously chose not to do it.
Yeah, exactly right. So you got to be fair. That's my point. You got to be fair with yourself. Don't go, well, I go like, it's like the Pilgrims. If the Pilgrims came back and they were like, man, there was no planes, trains, and automobiles, we were here. Okay, right. You're right. So
correct.
You can't be angry about things that weren't around. It's okay. So Don't be angry. You can't do that to yourself. And when you're doing that to yourself, that's why I just said, I go, but we really didn't understand that time. But I was like, oh my gosh, you got the most out of your God-given ability. Like you taxed it, you maxed it. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I honestly,
and no denigration, maybe the way, and you may do this, you punched above your weight.
Listen, I got the most out of it. Well, I'll tell you something to add to that, which I was
on the Walter Payton line, not the fastest, not the strongest, but he punched above his weight.
Just the best. Right. And you know what? I remember when before I was drafted, the combine, and they had like all these, they have all these written write-ups about the player. And I remember Alonzo Highsmith was #1. And then there was a guy named Vic out of Texas A&M. And I was around the 4th or 5th fullback. And they had like, okay, exceptional speed, size, strength, all these things. And then they get to me as like self-made player. I was like, what? That's what you write about me? But then now, as the little wisdom later on in life, I'm like, okay, well, actually, that's a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
And I got the most out of my God. I had the ability to create a professional athlete out of the skills I had. And I had peace. I was like, like a load jumped off me. I'd go to the Super Bowl. I had the greatest week of my life. I wanted to be 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks, and I've never looked back on that. And that's when, having experienced and lived it, asking people, hey, you might be in the journey right now. Just check in with yourself and ask yourself, am I doing my part? Okay. Just look in the mirror and go, are you doing everything you can? Because you owe that to yourself. Challenge yourself, and you're responsible for that. And at the end, if you could say, hey, I did my part, have peace, and there's a lot of joy that comes with that. And that's how, and I can't say, well, I got one regret, and I used that to never make that same mistake in my NFL career. I just didn't make a call I should have made to Mike Shanahan, who was the 49ers offensive coordinator at the time. But I have peace in every journey I have taken out, like my speaking journey. I don't ever regret going, I should be working harder, doing better and more. I don't. I keep doing everything I could possibly do in the process and the journey. And that tool that I have, that tool can be applied, it's where do I need to apply it? And people, that's true with everybody. You can, that tool can be yours. You don't have to have, some special gift. I did the exact same thing Walter Payton did. Okay. He had a different skill set than I had, but we both got the most out of our God-given abilities. That's all you
Yeah.
can ask.
And even acknowledging that, okay, the call to Shanahan. But then there's a process there where you forgive, you accept yourself, and you're not going to have that
Yeah.
be overweighted in some past rumination. I did what I did and I didn't do what I didn't do. It sounds so simple and almost cliche and lighthearted, but there's got to be an element of forgiveness and acceptance and move on. And that's a skill too.
Seth, you come up with probably the biggest step in self-evaluation and self-reflection. Yes, it is about we have responsibility to create a plan and take action. Okay, we have that, and that helps us on the journey, and we must check in with that and where are we. But also take an ownership of your life, of where you want to go, what you want to do, and what you want to be is a critical component of peace. Now, I'm not saying that, it can be hard to take ownership of your life, but not nearly as hard as running from it your entire life.
Yeah.
Once you take ownership, and that means, okay, a mistake I may made, something done to me that I have absolutely no control, but I keep harboring on it every day, me on the couch, blaming the doctors and, for their improper care. Okay. Well, once I took, and I've had many moments of this, once you take ownership, okay, listen, you put the trash behind you. Okay. Now I create a new sense of energy, a new platform, new patterns, new habits.
That's right.
And I go forward. I break those chains. I end those cycles, and that's enormous peace to not carry that burden around and learning to develop that habit, and I'm not saying that it's easy either. It's taken me 30 years to get to where, shoot, I've had a lot of things in my journey since those 30 years that were done that were, you could harbor that and you would argue with the person. And I'm like, I've never harbored on them for an hour. And and I've never regretted it, because all it would have done is bring me further down in a bad space versus allow me to move on in life.
But you didn't arrive, you or anybody, on our journey, whatever iteration we're in, wherever we are, if it's the track of life, wherever we are, quarter mile, mile, it just didn't happen by accident. That takes work and it's hard. Life is hard, but life is good. Again, just another phrase. But I want to go back to a phrase. You got my mind firing here, Meryl. And I know, having prepared and getting to know you, that this is not uncommon. You're open about sharing, and there is a part of the process that's valuable. It's empowering. You own your story. First of all, I love taking out the trash metaphor. In our household, Meryl, we call it flush the toilet. And while this is a PG family show, sometimes there's so much in the toilet, we need to flush it twice. You know what I mean?
Right.
We've all been there. That combine profile, self-made, it's also a little counterintuitive, because while the core virtue or the language of describing, not Alonzo Highsmith or this or that, there's a whole team and a whole group of people that, whether it was your Pee Wee coach, your Pop Warner coach, your high school coach, somebody in the training room in college that, gave you a little direction or a word of encouragement or some cold, hard truths, or learning how to work out better while you were self-made. And where I'm going with this is, and I talk to my children about this, it's like you're in cardiac arrest. At 30, you have to learn to walk and read and write all over again. You have dark moments on the couch. And at that moment, it's the Lynn Swans and everybody else that you reached out to is what's valuable. You could have the boat, you could have the car, you could have all these things. It doesn't matter. And it's people and friends that are the ones that are the sustenance and that are going to give you that alimentation, that nurturing and that nutrition for the soul. And I just want to take it a step further. You do a lot of keynote speaking, and you see these big events and the teams that it requires, whether it's the gentleman in the catering team who's pouring coffee, or the AV guy who's making sure your mic and your lighting are right, or the meeting professional that's making sure your room, your ground transportation is covered. There's a team. And I just want you to kind of tie that through for us on your journey, the grit, the resilience, finding a way. And while it sounds like, I was on the couch and I looked in the mirror, and I know you're not coming off that way, that just underscoring all the people that are unseen there and how important a part they play in that. It's more of an editorial than a question, but are you tracking me?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's why at some point, and it's early on in my presentation, I make it very clear I'm a product of a lot of people. People have challenged me, people
Yes.
have inspired me. I find hope in people. And I share a few of those, obviously, the Aristotles, the Chuck Knowles, the Walter Paytons, but there's a litany of people that have done those unique or done some things or do some things or have done things along my journey that have made me who I am. And I find value in that. That's why in the end, I do make it very clear that like football's the greatest team sport I ever played, but life is the greatest team game.
Mm,
Individually we're strong, but collectively we are powerful. And that's why, when I have an event together, I'm like, what value do I have if I come here and nobody's here? And I get to share this message with no one. And even in my process prior to speaking, my goal is to find out more about who I'm going to speak to. That helps me. That changes me, not just in the message that I'm going to share or build on based on the client, but it helps me learn about them. And what I get to do this stuff, I've yet to go through that process and find out we are not that we are more alike than we are not.
totally. I mean,
I
I
mean,
know you've spoken emergency room nurses, soybean growers, and everything, asphalt, tile contractors. I mean, everybody all grapples and deals and wants to progress, towards expanding and having a life that they're proud of and feel strongly about sharing. It's just so true what you're saying.
and this actually, regardless, I'm getting ready to speak to a big financial group in Chicago, and Shell just reached out to me to speak, and I spoke at an event they were doing in Pittsburgh. Now they've asked me to come to this corporate event in Houston. I just anyway, there's some completely different dynamics of and what they all do and what they're dealing with in a way, but it all narrows back down to the one thing that everybody is trying to do is they're trying to evolve and grow and get better. And what find a way, I should in the very beginning, find a way is not about me. Find a way is about you. It's about them. Somebody asked me, what's your goal about speaking? And I was like, well, geez, I mean, I've never been asked that before, but I thought real quick. I said, well, whatever the client, I usually I gear everything around what the client is trying to do. And then I'm like, wait a minute. No, I do have a goal. When I get done speaking, if they're talking about me, I did a bad job. But if they're thinking about themselves, then I did a good job. Because Find a Way is about people and it's about them. And it's about where their journey is. And it's not about trying to get an award. And I think that's where sometimes we get lost. You're trying to get that award. And that award can be a variety of things. I go, it's better to be rewarded than have an award that sits on a trophy that sits on a mantle. You can be rewarded in life with peace and joy and happiness, things that resonate and last in your craft and in your personal life. And you can gain personal success from that. When you learn how to grow and evolve like that, you mentioned an important thing that I'm glad you used the word things. When you said boats and cars and stuff like that, you know what? I had more things a long time ago. I have less things now,
Yeah.
and I am I'm happier.
Yeah.
I am happier. And somewhere I almost said I'm just about as happy. Like things don't make you happy.
No.
You think they make you happy, but they just don't make you happy. I have found a better way in life to, peace and joy and happiness, like, things that matter to you, things that you like doing, things you enjoy doing, and trying to constantly grow and evolve. I think service to others is awesome. I'm hosting this American Cancer Society in Chicago. and then one in Cincinnati. And we were just doing videos of that. And one of the questions was like, why do I get involved in it? And I'm like, well, anytime you're affected by something, I think that's just an immediate connection. But I go, the thing that probably stands out the most about things that I admire in people is people that have never been affected by cancer, meaning that it didn't happen to them personally, and they don't really know anybody other than like a third party. And they just, I want to help and I want to serve. And I just applaud people like that. I applaud
Yeah.
the type
Yeah.
of people that are out there, and I want to acknowledge them, and
Yeah.
because without them, I wouldn't be alive. I
Yeah.
really wouldn't, with those type of groups.
Yeah, it's inspiring. I mean, I'm getting a little bit of chills. I shared with you earlier, I've been affected by cancer personally. My father passed away when I was young. But I want to underscore something that you said about keynote speaking, but how it's tied into your purpose and how you view serving others. And you must, by osmosis, have heard one of our 90 plus episodes, because I explain it this way, and you said it so beautifully. If people leave my keynote and they're talking about me, I failed, or I don't know if you use the word fail, I haven't done my job, or it's not what your goal was. And here's what I say. I say, if I ask speakers, so I talk to all the time, when you get feedback, what do you hear? And a lot of times they're taken back by the question. I say, no, just tell me, the mic's off, they're out in the getting coffee or taking a bathroom break or whatever. And what they say, oh, they love my story. Oh, they're telling me I'm a great storyteller. And I just make a mental note of it. And I call that admiration. So what ends up happening, not by any fault, conscious fault, let's say, of the speaker, what their strong suit is that they're leaning on their charm, their charisma, some magnetism, and the audience is left with them as a personality. So of course, the feedback's going to be, you're an incredible storyteller. What a great story. As opposed to, hey, Meryl, do you have a minute? That story you shared with me about, Coach Noel, it made me think I need to go call my uncle. I need to clean something up. And I just wanted to
Correct.
let you know that you sparked that in me. Thank you. Appreciate it later on. Big love. You disappeared. The anecdote, the core virtue,
Correct.
the message, the distinction that you wanted to share got through there. Merril Hoge was not existing there. The idea, the thought, the philosophy, Aristotle, Walter Payton, Pocatello, Idaho, your whole body of work got through. And now in this made up example, this guy's going to talk to his uncle and clean something up. And I just love that you say that, because when I talk to meeting professionals, when I ask them, what do you want your attendees to walk away with? It's not just on a superficial level, I don't want to have any problems and I hope my boss likes it. It's deeper than that. It's an opportunity, and I'm going off on a soliloquy here, Meryl, but you've seen it where you're up there. It's sacred. You're in front of 500 people. You're imparting your journey, which is one journey in billions, billions. And you want to make a difference. And it's just so powerful. I just applaud you. I don't know. I'm going on a soliloquy. I just thank you for saying that, because I've said it on this podcast a million times.
Well, honestly, Seth, I don't think I could speak if that wasn't the purpose of the whole thing.
Right.
And I do. You said something I think is very interesting, and it's it's my most productive. When you get feedback, unsolicited feedback, that is your truest truth. What people say to you and how they say it, which you are right.
Yeah.
And I have been, and this is probably what I say, I find hope in people. I mean, when I talk about, I get to a point where I get very personal as to why I am grateful to be in front of them. Because I live with a perspective on life that I didn't have 21 years ago. And that perspective I now have is all I would have missed had I not survived my battle with cancer. And I watch my kids are 7 and 9. They were 7 and 9 at the time, and now they're 28 and 30, both married, 4 grandbabies, and 1 on the way. And I reflect on that often. I could have missed it all because I have people and dear friends like Stuart Scott, Sam Mills, that didn't get to finish the journey. They didn't get to see their kids evolve and grow. So I have that perspective too. But
Yeah.
I do share that when I stand, I say it every time I speak. So it isn't like, well, I just say it occasionally. I say it every time I speak. The reason I am grateful to be in front of those people is because I know it's possible for them.
Yeah.
I know it's possible
Yeah.
if you use this right here and you learn how some different techniques or enhance on some things you already have, how you can get those personal rewards that everybody wants in your life. And it's not just in your craft, it's in your personal life. And that balance is important.
Yeah.
I talk with companies all the time. I mean, listen, a more balanced person is going to be a more productive person. You know, they can't just be productive when they come in the
Right.
door. It's like, how are they, how's their other part of their life? And if, because I talk, the reason I'm getting into that is I find a way to turn into a parenting tool.
Yeah.
And
Well, you were
find a
reading my
way-
mind. You were reading my
Okay.
mind. Yeah.
And that just, I was raised much differently. That's why I see things through a child's eyes more than most adults do. But find a way to challenge me to self-reflect and break chains and end cycles. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not going to pass these on to my kids. And then I came up with a parenting tool. It turned into a coaching tool, even a business tool. It actually became a powerful business tool. Is I judge my kids in the yardsticks of their years and not mine. And what it did for me all the time, it gives me patience and perspective. And
Yeah.
well, I tell a story about this. I'm not going to do it now, but if you're 50, you see things at 50. So if there's a 5-year-old doing something, you're seeing it at 50. You ain't seen it at 5.
That's right.
But if for a second of perspective, patience and perspective, you say, let me just throw some 5-year-old eyes out there. I was 5 once. It seems reasonable now, but we see it at our age. We see it at our experience. And as a parent, I was like, I'm going to try not to do that. I'm going to try to see it yardsticks of their years and not mine. And I'm telling you, it was the greatest tool. Then as a coaching tool, it became valuable. Like from a business tool, it helps too, from, a leadership perspective, a teaching perspective.
Yeah.
Been in the company 30 years, you've been here 30 days. There might be some things that the 30-day person is like not doing right,
That's right.
and doesn't see it. And then as my kids got older, I actually told them about it. And then I asked them, judge me in the yardsticks of my years and not yours.
Yeah.
Because I've experienced all this. So when I'm sharing stuff with you, I'm sharing it from, I've lived it, I've done it. I'm helping you navigate through it the best I can. And so if I'm coming across a little different, just know the goal for me is to help you through it. And I'm telling you, I created a bridge. With my kids. And we all had moments where, they start saying stuff and I'm like, oh, I can see me going south. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Right. Yardsticks of their years. And then I'm sharing something with them and I can see them going south. And then I can see them going, wait a minute, and it just helped me, from a parenting, even a coaching and a business perspective. It's really helped because communication is about a bridge, tell people I learn more by listening than I learn by talking. And you got to have a bridge there. And if you can build that bridge of communication in workforce, personally, it just helps things so much.
Yeah, I can say as a parent, as a spouse, as a child, and you talk about bridge and the connection. As you were sharing, I was thinking of the connective tissue. What I find, Meryl, is, at least from my perspective, when I use the metaphor bridge, it's like, oh yeah, there's a bridge. Sometimes I have to go all the way to the other side of the bridge where they are and inhabit their space before we can kind of get over to my side or somewhere in the middle, and that connective tissue and that understanding. But it's interesting because you made me think a little bit. Here I am pontificating and making judgment about speakers who get admired. What I then ask the speaker, and this is related to parenting as well, is, okay, they come up to you and say, oh my God, your rookie season, you did this and what a great story. And they might even say, I so admire you. And you could say, well, what is it about that really struck you? Not like you're their therapist. There might be 10 people waiting for a selfie or something, but just one line of questioning that would deviate them to turn and reflect and have a little bit more of a value that they can walk away with other than just this spiky high moment of, I met this
Right.
guy who was in the NFL and he had a great story and we got a selfie. You know what I'm saying? And that requires that patience and perspective. Okay, I've got an admirer. That's lovely. Nothing wrong with that. But how can I leverage this bridge right here, right now, that's in front of me, and ask one question or inquire or get curious or provoke something that we can then get a little bit more runway on, and that's the speech that's continuing off the stage and they can take it with them.
Well, I completely agree with that. I'm grateful that I started out in this journey. My first agent, Bill Halleck, who now is at CAA and runs all that. He was, I didn't realize it. Actually, I didn't realize it. I mean, I knew what I loved about speaking because I got challenged to do that sitting in a chemotherapy chair. So I just took that rawness out there, and I started thinking about like Aristotle, man, he helped me. Chuck Noll helped me. I mean, Walter Payton helped me. And that was my ultimate goal. Like, God, how can you just share stuff with people that can help them? Right? I never thought anything. That's why I want to speak. And he called me up. He said, a client had called him and said, in 20 years, we've never had anybody come in here and share a message that resonated and hit us like it hit us.
That's
and he
awesome.
goes, I love it that you love it and that you're trying to help other people.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, Bill, what did you think I was doing? Because I was novice, right? Because he's in your world, okay? So he sees a lot of different things I had not seen. I was in my scope. He had his scope.
Right.
And it just hit me. I was like, oh wow. I never thought of that.
Awesome.
I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's cool. Well, Meryl, I could keep talking, but I think we're going to leave it here. We're getting to the end. I just want to thank you for truly just sharing, being so open. This is a great conversation. I know those who are listening, who have come in for the first time, thank you for joining us. Those who have come back, thank you for returning. Again, subscribe. But really, Meryl, the difference you make is important. You do work that impacts lives. You don't often see it literally, that's right in front of you, but I can tell you from the clients that you've presented to and the people that have heard you, whether it's from the keynote stage or at the American Cancer Association and all the events that you're doing. Thank you just for what you're doing and the difference you're making, and for your generosity of spirit with us, the Keynote Curators. I look forward to these conversations, and this has been no exception. So we appreciate everybody for joining us. Thank you for listening to the Keynote Curators Podcast. You're smarter for it.